Welcome into Attacking Third for a very special U.S. Women's National Team gold medal match recap against Brazil. We got gold, ladies. We got gold.
Let's go.
Incredible stuff. We are recapping everything that went down with the U.S. Women's National Team in their 1-0 win in the gold medal match over Brazil alongside Darian Jenkins and Sandra Herrera. I'm Lisa Carlin. We all started this episode with a little bit of a dance party because the USA got gold. Darian, why are you dancing?
Well, yeah, you just said it. The U.S. got gold.
I don't know. What'd you like about it?
We got gold. I don't know what else to say about it. We got gold. We had a good win. Alyssa Nair for president. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I'm hyped we got gold. And shout out to Emma Hayes because damn did she overcome a lot. And imagine what she's going to do. I'm thinking ahead already. Imagine what she's going to do with this team in 2 years. What the next World Cup is going to look like. This team is already scary, and I cannot wait for the future of this squad.
It's so good. I love that, Darian. The lady was too stunned to speak. It's like we're just like all marinating in it a little bit. And I'm so thrilled for these players, for that attacking trio, for Alyssa Nair, the veteran coming into action. And Emma Hayes, this was someone who came in on the job 3 months ago and did a lot of work to try to maybe temper some expectations or at least put them in perspective. I mean, I think back to May and chatting with her in New York. And one of the things that stuck with me was how she said, we got work to do. And that could have been interpreted a number of ways. And that maybe the Olympics are going to be a measuring stick of that. So gold is always going to be the goal, the main goal, but who knows how they'll get there. And they got there today. Incredible stuff. Congrats.
The expectations for this U.S. side is always to be at the top. Number one, winning gold, winning World Cups. However, heading into this Olympics was such a short runway for Emma Hayes as the new head coach and a new group of players learning rhythm and building chemistry together. The expectations seemed a bit more far-reached than a lot of people expected. And it was like, okay, that's what we want, but how realistic are those expectations? Hopefully a medal, hopefully playing in the gold medal match, but ultimately for the U.S. to pick up their 5th Olympic gold in 2024 in Paris, thanks to an incredible Mallory Swanson goal that came throughout this match in the second half, ultimately in the 57th minute. But U.S. pick up their first gold medal since 2012, and we are recapping all of it. Let's dive through the starting lineups first. We're going to start with Brazil because Autor Elias had really showcased a lot of changes before every single match, 5-6 changes in their personnel and lineup. Only 2 changes from the semifinal, with Priscila coming in and, Adriana coming in and Duda Sampaio coming in, with Priscilla and Angelina going out. But in goal, it was Lorena in the back, Tarciane, Lauren, Ferreira, Yasmin, Duda, Yaya, and Adriana, Ludmila, Jennifer, and Portillo up top. So really just 2 changes for Brazil. And then for the U.S. women's national team, 1 change coming in the midfield for Emma Hayes. Rose Lavelle on the bench, getting the start on the bench, with Corbin Albert slotting into that midfield, which pushes Lindsay Horan a little bit higher and Sam Coffey a little deeper. Otherwise, the same 10 that we had seen previously. Alyssa Nair in goal, Crystal Dunn, Tierna Davidson, Naomi Girma, and Emily Fox in the back line. Sam Coffey, Corbin Albert, and Lindsay Horan in the midfield, with Mallory Swanson, Sophia Smith, and Trinity Rodman up top. Some notes on this starting lineup: Mallory Swanson making her 100th cap in this gold medal match. And for Sophia Smith, happy birthday. You get a gold medal. You turn 24. You get the start. But looking at these lineups, Darian, with the change, Rose Lavelle out, Corbin Albert in, what was your initial reaction to that?
I was a little bit worried. We've talked at length about the qualities Lavelle brings to a game. She can change a game even with just 10 minutes of playing time, how creative she is. Exploiting pockets, the texture on passes, and her vision she's able to have is different than any other quality of of a midfielder that the US has. She is in a league of her own. So I thought that that was a really big loss not having her. And I think we saw it, especially in the first half. I know we're going to go in depth over it, but Albert's just a player that doesn't have that same attacking quality. She's very solid defensively. She's a great 8. She has that ball playing ability, but just technically, creatively, they're completely different players. So I thought that was a big change. I was happy to see Davidson in, knowing, hey, we're going to get more than a half, hopefully, and we did. But I liked this starting lineup. I figured she wasn't going to tinker too much just based on the rest of the tournament and what she said about wanting them to suffer with the fatigue and just the style that this tournament is. And they came out on top, and she really proved to us why she wanted them to suffer, because they ultimately get that dub. They get the gold. We're all dancing. We're smiling. It worked out.
This was the youngest starting 11 for the U.S. women's national team in a gold medal game since 1996. And a little bit of that having to do with the Lavelle-Albert swap. Sandra, with this starting 11 for the U.S., what notes did you notice immediately?
I was like everyone else, with Albert in the middle. And I think for the coaching staff, those are calls they have to make. I mean, that was part of why they brought in Emma Hayes. What type of decisions needed to be made, and will the coach make them when they need to be made? We saw out of the trainings, Roosevelt rocking the leg sleeve, and yes, you can have fun with it on social media, but maybe it was an indicator of some of the minutes that she's carried throughout the tournament, and whether or not that was a game time decision to kind of, keep her out because of the load that she has been playing throughout the tournament. So I'm not going to lie, to see the rotation, I wasn't maybe as startled or questioning as much as maybe some others, because I thought back to the Gold Cup. I've been feeling all of the Gold Cup vibes, all the Vamos vibes for this final. And I was like, yeah, this is a little bit of a throwback for me. And I love a good throwback. Albert and Coffee with a lot of good chemistry coming out of that. But this is also not like 6 months ago. So once the play actually got rolling, there were some nerves, I think, that were pretty evident in such a high stakes game. And they got bypassed, often. Let's just be real. Primarily in that first half. So I think I wasn't as maybe like too, maybe not as optimistic as some others, but not as pessimistic. I was just kind of right. I was neutral in the middle, where I was just like, well, this makes sense. They've sort of been here before. Let's see how it plays out. And then when we started to see it play out, I think we were all kind of like, hold on, what's going on here?
Sandra, thank goodness for your level head. I was like freaking out a little bit. I was like, Brazil is going to get goals. They're going to score.
They almost did.
Considering how this 90 minutes unfolded. But you did touch back on the W Gold Cup back in March, and that was a Brazil-USA final. The 5th meeting between USA and Brazil in a final was today, and US has won all of those by a 1-goal margin. This time it comes by way of Mallory Swanson. But when you look at Brazil's starting lineup, no Marta in that 11 that took the field first. She was available after serving her 2-match suspension in the previous 2 games for Brazil. And Darian, we predicted Marta was going to start, but she didn't. We did ultimately see her, but what do you think is the process and decision-making there from Artur Elias?
Possibly to not mess up chemistry. I mean, this team corralled around not having Marta on the pitch and dug deep within themselves to come back, fight, play 2 matches without her, when really her story was the motivation of this tournament for this Brazilian team. So I think not wanting to mess that up, how much this team and chemistry they built, how hard they fought together to get to the final. I understand not wanting to change that, taking players out that showed up for those 2.5 matches that she wasn't there, and did put the team on their back. I still think I would have loved to see Marta come in the game sooner. I thought, especially coming directly from the first half, why not come out swinging again? You had all of the momentum in the first half. I think that would have been the perfect time to then, hey, let's give you another wall to go through. Let's give you another problem in the attack, because hardly anybody can defend Marta. She is the cheekiest player to ever play the game on the women's side. So I wish I would have seen her sooner. I think it could have affected the game for Brazil, but I understand not wanting to shift chemistry and not, I don't want to use the word reward players, but
But they
take
had
away from the players that fought hard to get
and
to the final.
succeeded in the previous 2 matches without Marta finding the back
Yeah.
of the net. But there's an element of emotional depth there, Sandra, because this was Marta's 3rd Olympic gold medal match. She had won silver previously, falling to the US, and it almost redemption for her in her last international competitive match that we could see with Brazil. It almost feels like you should have given her more time because of the emotional depth of this.
I mean, maybe. I think those are all valid points, and I think that was the biggest burning question going into this match for Brazil. Will they or will they not start Marta? And I got to tip my hat to the coaching staff, because I think at that point, at that stage at the Olympics, you maybe want to ride the momentum of what has been building through the knockout rounds, and they got through those elimination stages without Marta. And maybe there's a counter argument that they did a little bit of it for her and wanted to make sure that they were still playing for a medal in some capacity so that she could return to the pitch. And maybe bringing her on to start would maybe disrupt the game plan on the other side of the ball for USA. But I got to say, when I saw their starting lineup, I respected it. I said, okay, this makes sense. You're going to ride the hot roster that's been, getting you through these moments. But I was less on Marta and more maybe Angelina. I thought Angelina was going to get a start in this game, and it didn't happen.
Your best combined 11.
Yeah, and it just didn't happen, and maybe it's because of her efforts against Spain. She was just everywhere, and maybe you're taking into consideration player match minutes and the load that they've been carrying into the final. Maybe you want to have a player like that available off of the bench to help kind of shake things up if they need to do that. And it kind of looks like that was the game plan a little bit for Brazil. So it wasn't for lack of effort, because that was definitely a first half that the USA had to sustain some things from Brazil. I think the expected goal stat was completely opposite for Brazil and USA, kind of coming out of that first half. Too close for comfort, maybe at sometimes.
Sandra, I like your shout for Angelina and deserving of that start. Audrey dropping stats in our chat right now that Angelina came on in the 61st minute, and she created 2 chances already for Brazil once she came on, and that's only playing 30 minutes of the match. Interesting, but Brazil did have chances. Yasmin down the flank, Adriana on the flanks as well. Mila, I think, had a really impressive game. We're going to dive into it. What all went down, especially in the first 45 minutes, because the U.S. went into halftime 0-0. We're going to talk about it. U.S. win gold, but how did they get it done? Stick around. We are talking all about it when we get back. Welcome back to Attacking Third. USA get the 1-0 win thanks to Mallory Swanson in the 57th minute to win gold. Their first time in 10 years. Incredible. Or 12 years, from 2012. And they do it again over Brazil. But we have to talk about how this match started, because 1 change for the U.S., 2 for Brazil coming into the starting lineups. But the lack of rotation from Emma Hayes and the U.S. side proved that Brazil looked a little fresher to start this game. Darian, in the opening whistle and how this game unfolded, what did you notice about how both Brazil and the U.S. were playing?
Well, the U.S. came exactly how they've came out every single game. Brazil, we predicted they're not going to sit in a low block. They're not going to be scared to play against the U.S. They just took down the #1 team in the world, Spain. You're going to come out swinging. And they came out and they were building in a 3-2-5. They had 5 on the U.S. back line. They were playing over Dunn side, especially because that left back position rotates a little bit higher. And I think it caused so many questions. You saw Adriana and Portillo going against Davidson and Dunn. If Dunn was there, no one was getting by. I mean, Dunn was saving the world on that left side. She's my player of the tournament. I know we're going to get into it, but all hail to Crystal Dunn. But when it was Davidson, they were taking full advantage, getting end lines, sending crosses in. Same between Fox and Gurma. There was some combination play where they were splitting the outside back and the center back and getting into really dangerous positions. And then, you know what? When they were going heavy into transition and the U.S. tried to counter, they were picking balls off. They were regaining possession really quickly. They were really shutting down the U.S. attack. And I think for the first 45 minutes, it was really effective. The U.S. didn't have much of an answer. There were some opportunities, but the first half fully went to this Brazilian side, and I think they executed their game plan well. You could see the freshness in their legs too over the US, and that was a big concern we had coming into this match. But the US, they dug deep. I don't know how these girls still have energy.
Sandra, was there a moment of Brazil's influence on this first half that stood out to you?
Ludmila, I think she had an incredible tournament for Brazil. But you know who else had a really incredible tournament? Alyssa Nair. And the future Chicago Red Stars teammates had a couple of moments where they kind of introduced themselves to the other. But there's a moment, I think, during this first half where you see that impressive play by Brazil, where they come out and want to take the game to the United States. I think I said ahead in the build up to this game that the Believo-meter was off the charts for this game on both sides. The USA and Brazil were coming into this game with absolute BelieveBall on their mind, because when you get to that point in the gold medal match, you kind of have to have some of those other things to pull from, because the fatigue is starting to set in. You're starting to feel it in your body and on your legs. And I wondered if some of the energy and some of the game that Brazil was bringing early on, if it was going to be sustainable throughout the remainder of the match. You're talking about a gold medal match where obviously you have to go through 90, but what if this goes longer? So there was a little bit of the feeling maybe around the half hour mark for me where I was like, eventually this is actually going to play in the favor of the United States, because Brazil has done a lot of great work throughout these Olympics, but eventually there's a game where that run comes to a stop, and it was this gold medal game. To not convert those chances that they had in the first half gave that feeling as if it was going to come back and haunt them, and it absolutely did, because the USA have an absolutely haunting attacking line.
I would wanted to shake my TV because Brazil was creating brilliant 1v1s, 2v1s on the outsides. Portillo, for me, was player of the match for Brazil, whipping balls in, being lethal, going 1v1, especially against Davidson. I thought she kind of had Davidson in her back pocket at times. No one was throwing body, life, limb, heart to get on the end of the crosses. There was times where you could literally throw your leg out, dive, do something just to get something on it. Make Alyssa Nair have to make a standout save again. They had so many opportunities in the first half around the 20th minute for a spell of maybe 10 minutes where they were just attacking so many dangerous balls across the back line, beating Gurma 1v1. The first time we've really seen Gurma kind of take an L out of 1v1 battle in this entire tournament, maybe this entire year.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
How do you not? I just wanted them to throw their bodies on the line to get it on frame. And there were opportunities where I feel they didn't, and they could have had 2 or 3 on the US.
Brazil had those waves of attack, and really coming from the wide areas. That's where they worked so well with their wingback players, with Yasmin and Adriana getting high, but it was Ludmila and Yasmin combining on the left side, and they looked so good together. They looked confident in running at it, but throughout all of that, Brazil continued to put the U.S. in uncomfortable positions where the U.S. had to defend a lot. And Darian, you mentioned Naomi Gurma having gotten beat, and that not happening very often. However, Alyssa Nair still comes up with big saves, right? There's a moment at the end of this first half where a cross comes in, Emily Fox just heads it wide, so it's not on target. And then in the stoppage time at the end of the first half, Alyssa Nair with a huge save from crosses that come in from Brazil from the right side, and then opportunities that are on target. However, it stays scoreless heading into the half. How much confidence, Darian, does that give the United States, knowing that Brazil probably could have and should have had 2, maybe 1 at least in the first 45?
It was good because the US sustained this wave of pressure. And as Sandra thought, I didn't think Brazil could come out and maintain that transition energy, that high press energy for the entirety of the second half. And it proved true. They fell off. They looked unorganized in the back. Once the US was still focusing on let's transition because Brazil's sending so many numbers forward, we saw mental lapses, we saw tired legs, mistakes that shouldn't be made in a final that ultimately cause a goal and cause quite a few chances for the US to get goals. So I think the US confidence, sustaining that pressure, being able to work through it, come out 0-0, knowing, okay, we've got 45 minutes to put it in the bag to do it. They ultimately did. And I think that their game plan was so smart. Ride that wave. Don't try to falter. Don't change your game plan too much. And it worked out. I mean, Emma Hayes is a tactical genius. That pressure is scary to play against. It's chaotic. It makes you have a lot of errors in your game. It's mentally exhausting to defend like that and try to be organized. You look at your back line and there's more Brazilian shirts than US shirts.
I was gonna
That's
say,
just scary.
That Brazil had the ball, it just looked like green shirts running at the blue shirts. And
Like,
Yes.
yeah, there's a lot of problems to solve, but I think just the whole trend of this tournament has been watching the US overcome challenge after challenge, teams posing different questions for the US. They've come out on top. I think going to this game, they had the utmost confidence that they could solve it. Just get through the half, and then it's going to come. I had the feeling they just knew it's going to come.
I think that's what, like, that is such an important, those are so many important points to know. And I think that's sort of what I referenced as well with some of the believe ball. It's not just about having the confidence and getting to the moment of competing into a gold medal match and saying, we've come so far, so of course we can win it. Like, yes, of course that comes with it. It's the believe ball mentality of like knowing that there are long stretches of this game that probably feel bad to you as a player on the pitch. I can only imagine that it doesn't feel great when you are asked as a first-time Olympian, whether you're Sam Coffey or Corbin Albert, to start in this game and see and feel what Brazil is bringing to you on the pitch. You absolutely have to have your believe ball meter off the charts in this one. And it was great to sort of see that type of response, to kind of still keep that confidence, to not get frustrated if maybe long stretches of first half play were not going your way.
At halftime, US Brazil go into the locker room tied 0-0. And on the broadcast, Julie Foudy mentioned a stat, team passing with Naomi Girma. She said that Girma had a team high of 109 touches through the first 5 matches. And at halftime for the US, she only had 17. And after she said that, I thought, well, Sam Coffey really hasn't been dictating as much of this game as I need her to. So I looked up Coffey's passing stats. Through first half against Brazil, Coffey had completed 6 of her 11 attempted passes. That is a 55% completion, but only attempting 11 passes. When you look back to the semifinal match against Germany, Coffey had 53 of her 60 attempts completed at 88% throughout 90 minutes of that match. And we were only at 11 at 45 minutes. Coffey was going to have to step up her game in the second half, get on the ball more, be an option for Girma to have those wall passes. And that possession for the US was going to ultimately dictate how well they did in the second 45. And spoiler alert, they did dang well because the U.S. got a goal from Mallory Swanson and they end up winning. But we are diving into what changed in the second 45 for the U.S. to ultimately be at the top of the podium at the end of the day. Don't go anywhere. We've got more Attacking Third breaking down U.S. versus Brazil. Welcome back to Attacking Third. U.S. get the 1-0 gold medal match win over Brazil, but it took until the second 45 for the U.S. to capitalize. Sandra, we went into halftime break. 0-0 between US and Brazil. No changes for Emma Hayes. But the first 10 minutes of the second 45 felt different. What was different for the US?
A halftime reset. Look, I'm desperate to know what came out of maybe the 4 to 5 minutes that the coaching staff maybe actually had to get into the ears of their starters, because I think at that point, for what we saw in the first half, you're thinking, oh my God, Brazil is just taking it to the United States. The midfield is absent. I mean, listening to you run down some of those passing stats, Lisa, tough day first half at the office for sure. 63% passing accuracy is not something you want to have as a midfielder, especially when part of your job is to be the connective tissue. So I'm assuming, because we don't exactly have that intel from France quite yet, that maybe part of halftime was hitting that reset button, ensuring that initial starting 11, that they were going to be trusted to get out there and get the job done. And maybe if you're a player and you're coming off of a first half like that, that's something that you need to hear, because the opening 10 to 12 minutes of this second half was already giving a very different energy than what the United States women's national team had started the game with at opening whistle. They were a little bit more fierce. They brought a bit more bite. I think knowing that they had to play a bit more defensively and generate offensively through expelling so much defensive energy, having that knowledge and knowing what you know from the first half and building on it in the second half, they got off to that start immediately. And it felt like it was going to just take one moment, and it did. That's all it took in this second half.
We got our one moment in the 57th minute. Mallory Swanson scores the game-winning goal for the U.S. Darian, this is one of my favorite parts of our recaps. Break down the goal for us.
Let's go.
I can do that.
Yeah.
All right. I am with Sandra. I think the halftime speech was, you rode the wave. You have all the confidence in the world. Brazil cannot maintain. Let's effing go. As soon as you gain possession, first pass goes forward. Look for Swanson, Rodman, and Smith. Get it forward. I think Albert felt that. You watched the play. The ball pops out. Albert, first touch, looks up, slips it through to Swanson. I know there was controversy. Who's offside? Smith was offside. She doesn't touch the ball. Lets it go to Swanson, which I think shows so much growth from Sophia Smith, because when you're a young player, you're thinking, I want to go to goal. This is mine. I'm taking this, especially as a 9. Swanson does brilliant. She puts it on her right foot. She takes a little touch inside, cuts out the defensive line of Brazil. And when you're a forward, this is what you train for. You make the goal big. You make the keeper have to ask questions. Is it going near? Is it going far? Keepers are taught to block near. Swanson keeps it low, slots it far, and just look at the celebration on her face. These are the moments you live for, you train for. It was so cool to see her 100th cap get this finish, and I think she deserves it so much. This was a great team goal from the U.S., and like Sandra said, just riding the wave of Brazil and having that confidence. They look like they didn't falter in the second half. They just had that. The belief meter was off the charts after this.
Meter, I like that. Darian, you touched on the controversy of this. Before we dive into actually what happened, as a forward, when you're Sophia Smith in that moment and the ball is coming to you, you're practically jumping around the ball. Did she know not to touch it? Or how much communication is between Smith and Swanson in that moment so Smith is not offside?
I wouldn't know if she knew she were offside, because it was really close. But you look up and Swanson's there. She's right-footed. These players have so much chemistry. You've seen their comments. They talk about it off the pitch in interviews together. You see it on the field. Knowing that there's a player that's coming in, facing the goal already, you're going to let them have it, as opposed to running outside. Smith is also right-footed, trying to put it on her right. It's going to take more time. Who's more efficient at getting to the goal quicker? Swanson was. It was directly in her line of sight. She just had to take a touch inside to cut out the defensive line. Smith still made a run to get in the box near the 18, stay in the frame of the goal for a possible rebound. Maybe she's cutting it to the square across the face of the goal for a tap in. It was brilliant. These players know what they're doing. It was fun to see the growth, though, and that recognition of, this is how we're going to score. This is a real team we're seeing come together.
And
that was the
comes
biggest that was the biggest thing for me. I think there's been so much of last summer that has followed some of these players around a little bit, and I think in the Gold Cup there was a lot of narrative around maybe kind of slaying some of those demons and getting past those moments. But the Olympics is a different kind of beast. And I think what's been so impressive from this attacking line is that confidence on the ball. They're playing like they have played through a pressure cooker before. And Soph Smith especially, presence of mind to make sure that she laid off of that ball when your job as an attacking offensive player is to get on balls and generate attacks and score goals. You have to pick and choose those moments in which to be unselfish as well. Incredible stuff from her today, and an incredible finish by Swanson.
I'm not sure we get that goal and that not touch from Smith in the first match of this tournament. And that's a testament to Emma Hayes continuously playing these players together so that they can grow and have that chemistry and true understanding of being yin and yang and being the triple espresso up top, because it was a really close call. All the Brazilian defenders stopped on this play. Their hands were up. The commentators, everyone was like, well, this is going to be called back. Even me watching, I was like, from the naked eye, it looked like it. Shout out to Christina Uncle, who is a CBS Sports rules analyst. She put a tweet out there breaking down this play. She says, no touch on the ball by Smith. There was an opponent nearby. She interfered with their ability to play the ball, but it doesn't constitute an offside infraction. So this is a, quote, wait and see from the assistant referee perspective before they raise the flag to see if it's offside. And ultimately, Smith was deemed offside. However, she didn't touch the ball, and there was no offside infraction interfering with the play from Smith. So it is onside. US take the lead in the 57th minute over Brazil. From there, Brazil makes a couple of changes, including Marta coming in and Angelina, Sandra. So these are a number of different players that can change the game. Priscilla also coming in. And then it felt like a track meet. I was like watching the tennis match, my head going side to side. I was like, did we get to the track
like
finals?
Track ended yesterday. What are we doing?
Exactly. Did we already get to these track finals? It was so open, Darian. Was there a moment of nerves there that, oh man, Brazil is going to equalize?
Honestly, no, because when I saw the US transition and how open the Brazilian backline was, I thought, oh my God, if I were Brazil, I would be locking numbers back, because the fatigue set in and just exposed that 3 back and the 2 midfielders. It was so easy for the US to just bomb a ball forward, be really hopeful. Even if they didn't get the first ball, there was a mistake made by the Brazilian back line where the US were able to pick it up. I had more faith in the US 1v1 defending, box defending, than I did Brazil, because I think they conserved their energy in a way that made sense in this final, knowing like, hey, we've gone overtime in how many matches? We have to be smart about where we're putting all of our energy forward. The US also were really smart, Emma Hayes, by pulling Trinity Rodman back, not sending her so high, knowing, hey, Brazil's sending so many numbers forward. We need you to be a little bit more defensive. This is your role this match. Be a more of a defensive forward. And I thought they executed it well. And Brazil just, they kind of shot themselves in the foot with it. They just looked so fatigued in the back. There were cramps happening. They had some injuries, which is really unfortunate. But it comes down to logging those minutes in those miles in the first half, where you were gassed and you just saw the lapses in their touches and decision making that just fell right into the US's palms, and they took advantage of it.
I think we see it early. I think, yeah, you go in at halftime as USA and you maybe don't feel great about some of the stretches of that first half. But I think on the other side of that locker room, you have a Brazil side that maybe feels good about what they were bringing in that first 45, but they also didn't get the goal. And they also went up against a brick wall and Alyssa Nair, and they were generating and not connecting. And that also doesn't feel great at a certain time, especially when you're going up against, again, a very good offensive side that's having a great Olympic tournament. And to come out in the opening second half and the US to kind of find those areas to exploit very early, there were a couple of times where we ourselves needed to double check and say who actually got credited with an assist. I mean, if you go back and look at the replay, I almost can't believe that there was that much opening in a lane for Corbin Albert to exploit to get this ball and connect with the attackers. So it was great heads up stuff and adjustments from Emma Hayes all the way to the players on the pitch.
Yeah, really tactical coaching from Emma Hayes. In the first half, the U.S. had just 3 shots, and in the second, they had 7. Plus, the U.S. ended up winning every single defensive stat against Brazil, and that continued to grow throughout the match, especially in the second half. Tackles won, interceptions, blocks, clearances, keeper saves. Alyssa Nair putting her body on the line, 4 saves ultimately in this match to help the U.S. win gold for the first time in 12 years with a 1-0 win over Brazil. But we have to talk individual players, who stood out to us, what we learned from this side. So don't go anywhere. We are talking all of that when we get back. Welcome back to Attacking Third. Mallory Swanson's 57th minute game-winning goal over Brazil, her 5th of the tournament, lifts the U.S. to gold, their first since 2012. So it's 12 years and 1 day since the U.S. won that gold, and they do it over Brazil. Sandra, I just have to reflect a little bit, because you and I covered our first Olympics tournament together, you and I, on Attacking Third in Tokyo, when the U.S. ended up winning bronze under Vlatko Andonovski. We are 3 years later, and the U.S. is now winning gold. What is the number one change that you see in this U.S. women's national team side?
Absolutely. I think coaching is a huge aspect of it. And I want to widen that lens a little bit to make sure that we include the work that Twyla Kilgore helped bring in ushering in this next era. Emma Hayes got to the United States and sung her praises and was full of compliments for her efforts over the 9 months that it took for the hiring process to get finalized and her arrival on the sideline. But here they are 3 months later, and you have to take it straight from the players themselves and how they have adjusted under this new coaching staff and the things that they have learned and the things that they feel like where they're growing, and that this is actually just the beginning and not the end game for them. That's scary, man. And that's part of what Emma Hayes wanted to reinvigorate and bring back a little bit. She's very familiar with the USA DNA, did not want to go and redefine that, but wanted to remind players and make sure that they put in the work so that they believed that they could get back there. And watching it in real time during this Olympic Games, that is the huge difference from the previous Tokyo Games, last year's World Cup, and this year's Olympics.
Emma Hayes in her post-game comments saying that she was desperate to do well for this country. She loves America, and this country made her. Emma Hayes becomes the 4th coach to win their first major tournament in charge of the U.S. women's national team. Darian, only 10 games under Emma Hayes, but what has she learned from this group?
Oh man, that is a tough question. What has she learned from this group? I think a new level of tenacity. Knowing that you're coming in with so much doubts. It's the U.S. women's national team. The expectation is to win, always. Her being able to handle that and also thrive in this environment. Players love her. The community loves her. She's given so much to this team and to this federation just by her presence alone. She's kind of taken the BS out of this superficial layer of U.S. soccer that we're all accustomed to having, and stripped it down and said, you know what, the expectation's too much. They're players. Mistakes happen. We want to learn. We want to suffer. This is how we're going to get there. And I think it's not only made her a better coach, it's made this federation and these players absolutely thrive in this environment. And as Sandra said, it's really scary. It's only the beginning. You said 10 games. Imagine when there's 40, 50. The players, this federation, how she is as a coach is going to change. I honestly think the way that soccer is looked at in the US, and think about all the little kids that are watching this and feeling motivated by seeing themselves in these players, in this coach. She's making history, and I can't wait to see what's next.
There's so much excitement for what is next and what is to come. One player that we are going to talk about the players that played, but one player for the US that never saw time this tournament that was a big bright light coming into this roster, midfielder Jaedyn Shaw. She was out during the group stage matches with a bit of an injury, but available for all of these knockout rounds. And Darian, we never saw her. What does that mean?
I don't want to speculate. I mean, we know that she had a knock, and something Emma Hayes said as well, is that she didn't want to change the lineup too much. She wanted to have them suffer. She wanted this team to gain chemistry. She wanted to know these players, that to be the standard of how the US digs down and wins matches. This team has set that. I think with Shaw, unfortunately, getting her knock as early as she did, the chances for her to play and prove like, hey, I can keep up. I'm with the chemistry. I get it. I can vibe. I can overcome X, Y, and Z in games, whether I'm playing Germany, Japan, whoever. We didn't get to see it. I think maybe it's not putting her in the most successful position to come into a match like this without getting any minutes in the previous matches, and asking her to keep up with the game. It's hard, especially mentally, when you're a player and you've missed out on so much. And then you're going to Olympic final and you're that young and you don't have a ton of international experience. That's a lot of pressure. Maybe Hayes is looking ahead and thinking, I don't want to set her up or put her in a bad position. And she's just going to keep rocking with what she did. And hopefully that's the case and Shaw is okay and is healthy.
Right.
We don't know.
And not having Shaw for those group stage matches, that's when you would play her. That's when you'd throw her in for 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes at the end of a match in the stoppage time and get her that first experience to become an Olympian that gets a cap. But there were a lot of players that played and made big impressions. We're talking our top players of the tournament. Stick with us. U.S. pick up their first gold medal since 2012, and they do it by way of Mallory Swanson getting the 1-0 win over Brazil. Big picture, Darian. Player of the tournament for the U.S. women's national team. Hit us.
This is so hard. I want to say Crystal Dunn. That's my girl. I have to say it. I think she came in. Crystal's always been a player that's incredibly underrated, let alone coming into this tournament as a forward on the bubble, started every match at left back. I actually want to see a stat on how many people actually got by her. How many 1v1 battles did she lose? Because I think I can probably count them on one hand. She shut down so much in that left back position and covered for so many people. She's kind of the unsung hero for me of this tournament for the US squad. So she's my player of the tournament.
Oh, that is such a good shout. Yeah, she locked down in that left back position. Sandra, what about you? Who stood out to you?
Yeah, I love it. I love the unsung hero going for MVP. I think that's a great shout, Darian. I know we've talked a lot about Crystal Dunn as much as we can. We tried to give her flowers throughout this tournament. Thought she was incredible. It's a tough toss up for me. I'm leaning towards a Red Star player. I think for me though, I'm gonna go with Mallory Swanson. I'll go with an attacking player. Every game that she played throughout these Olympic Games was just verification, confirmation, whatever you want to call it, that her loss ahead of last summer's World Cup was the most catastrophic thing to happen to the United States women's national team. And every single minute that she played during these Olympics just proved that, game in and game out. We're talking about a player that has had such good chemistry alongside Sophia Smith, who has talked about having a very special bond with Swanson. I think her return to the pitch maybe eased some pressure and elevated some of that off of the shoulders of Trinity Rodman to allow her to be who she is. And she was out there combining, connecting, and scoring goals. Incredible comeback story for this player of the tournament for me.
Absolutely, Sandra. You mentioned that injury. It has been 490 days since her patella injury that took her out of contention for the Women's World Cup for Mallory Swanson. I'm going to go Alyssa Nair because of the huge moments that she saved for this U.S. women's national team to energize them, give them confidence defensively, keep them in games. And it's so hard as a goalkeeper. I could never do it, not just because balls are being whipped at your face like 25 miles an hour, 30, 40 miles an hour, but so much because you don't have a lot of action. You have to organize. You have to be so mentally locked in from the first whistle until the very last, because you never know when those moments are going to arise. And Alyssa Nair is always the first one to prove how locked in she is, how intense she can be, and to shut the haters down, Sandra. I mean, you touched on it. She is one that has ice in her veins with how well she can play. Ladies, okay, this was really fun. Covering the Olympics, talking about it. The U.S. won gold!
I'm sad it's over already.
Yeah, but that's the Olympics. It's different from that way in the World Cup, right? You can't blink, otherwise you'll miss.
Can't blink. All right, Darian, any final thoughts from you on this tournament?
Special shout out to Naomi Girma. I for sure thought you were going to say Girma, Lisa. I was wrong. I'm glad I didn't say that before you went. And shout out to Emma Hayes. I think she's changing this game. I absolutely think she's changing the way the U.S. looks at soccer and how little kids look up to these players. I can't wait for the future.
Yeah. Shout out. I'm with you. Final thoughts. Shout out Emma Hayes, the All-American girl at this point. Congrats on your gold. And honestly, congrats to all the first-time Olympians and this next generation of the U.S. women's national team. They took all that pressure, tossed it out the window. They're back.
Amazing. Baby. Congratulations, U.S. Get the 1-0 win over Brazil and win gold for the first time since 2012. Congratulations, Olympians, and thanks for joining us.